So let's jump to this handout that we have. And right here we have the steps to solving any equation. Emphasis on any. All right, we're going to have some crazy equations next week and the following week and a month from now. And in Algebra 2, we're going to have some crazy equations. And these are the steps to solving any equation. All right, so step 1 is to simplify both sides of the equation. You guys remember what simplify means? Simplify means distributive property and combining like terms, right? And that's what it says down here, distributive property and combining like terms. You're always going to distribute before combining. So that's step 1. Step 2 is to isolate the variable on one side. That means get x by itself on one side. And remember, what you do to one side, you must do to the other. And also remember that to get rid of something, you do the opposite, right? And notice down here, it says all of the equations on this section will already be simplified. So you don't even have to do step 1. All we're going to be worried about is getting x by itself on one side. So if it's not by itself, you're going to get it by itself by doing the opposite of whatever's there and doing it to both sides. So let's jump down here. We have several examples, and the explanation is already right next to it of what we're going to be doing. But let's start out by saying, where's x at? Is it on the left side of the equal sign or on the right side of the equal sign? Where is it? It's on the left. Is it by itself on the left side? No, there's a +3 right there. So how do you get rid of the +3? -3, the opposite, right? If there's a fire, you turn it off with water, with the opposite. So, and let me tell you this, I like doing the -3 right below it. Now, I've seen the textbook, especially, they do the -3. It's weird. They'll do it, let me erase mine just for a little while. They'll do the -3 out here in the front and put a -3 out here in the back. It's the same thing, right? I like to do it below because I think it's a little more organized. I mean, at least for me. If you like writing it on the side, go for it. But I like going below. I like to put a -3 right below the +3 so you could see it cancel, and a -3 over here. And what do you do with the x? You bring it down. What do you do with the equal sign? You bring it down, and 11 take away 3 is 8. So that's your final answer. Let's jump to the next example. On this one, we have -3. What's happening between the -3 and the x? Multiplication, right? So if you want to get rid of the multiplication of -3, you have to do the opposite of multiplying. What's the opposite of multiplying? Dividing. So you're actually going to do a fraction bar, which is a division bar, and divide by that same exact value, okay? So the opposite of multiplying by -3 is dividing by -3. And what you do to one side, you do to the other side again to maintain the balance. So the -3's cancel out, the x comes down, the equal sign comes down, and then it goes back to knowing how to divide and multiply and add and subtract integers. 12 divided by -3, what's the answer? -4. A positive divided by a negative is a negative. Let's move on. This one down here is actually a 2-step equation, all right? On today's homework, we're only doing 1-step equations. Well, we might as well jump into this one. Here's the x. This is what you want by itself. It's on the left side of the equal sign. Is it by itself? It's not by itself. You have a -2 right in front of it and a -5 over here. So the question is, which one do you get rid of first? The -5. It's kind of like this. X is the movie star or the rock star, the popular person, whatever. And this is the movie star's buddy. It's pretty cool to hang out even with the movie star's buddy. But this guy's a bum at the corner all by himself, the loner. You don't care about the loner. Let's get rid of that guy first. So the opposite of -5 is +5. That cancels out. What you do to one side, you do to the other side to maintain the balance. You're going to end up with 18 on this side. The equal sign is going to come down. And on the left side, you're going to have -2x. And then we go to get rid of the -2 in front of the x. Now, it does not say x minus 2. What does it actually say? It says -2 times x. So you got to recognize what operation is happening so you could actually do the opposite of that operation. So I'm going to be dividing by -2. That'll cancel out. What I do to one side, I do to the other. I'm dividing by -2. I get my final answer. The x comes down, the equals comes down, and I get 18 divided by -2. That answer is -9. That's my final answer. So let's jump to this one right here. This one's extra interesting because you have a fraction in front of it. Ladies and gentlemen, on an equation, you could get rid of any fraction or fractions by multiplying everything by the denominator of the fraction. So what I'm trying to say is, right here it says 2/5. What does that really mean? It means 2 divided by 5. Yeah? So I don't want this divided by 5. It would be a lot easier if it said 2x, right? If this divided by 5 wasn't here, it'd be a lot easier. So let's get rid of the divided by 5 by doing the opposite. What's the opposite of dividing by 5? Multiplying by 5, okay? So if I put a times 5 right there, it's going to be off balance, right? If I have a balanced equation, let's say this is weight. If I multiply by 5, it gets heavier and this gets lighter, or not gets lighter, but it gets heavier, so it throw it off balance. We need to maintain the balance, so if I multiply by 5 here, I need to multiply by 5 over here to maintain the balance. So over here, yeah, the opposite of dividing by 5 cancels it out. I will have 2x left over. I'll have the equal sign, and negative 4 times 5, that is negative 20. So I still need one more step. So I'm going to have to get rid of this 2 in front of the x. But I need to know what's happening with that 2. It says 2 times x. So what's the opposite of multiplying? Dividing. So you're going to divide by 2, the fraction bar. That'll cancel it out. What you do to one side, do to the other side. And you'll have your x all by itself. The equal sign comes down. You'll have negative 20 divided by 2. That's negative 10. And like I said, guys, all of this is explained right here, right? The verbal explanation. Okay, let's go down to this one right here. Again, x is the movie star. This is the movie star's buddy, this disgusting fraction. This is the bum at the corner. We're going to get rid of the bum at the corner first. So you're going to go plus 5, cancel it out, plus 5. What you do to one side, you do to the other to maintain the balance. I'm going to rewrite my equation. There it is, negative 2/3. This negative 2/3 x comes down. The equal sign comes down. 1 plus 5 is 6. So now we need to get rid of this fraction. A fraction is really a division problem. So if you want to get rid of the 2 divided by 3, let's get rid of this divided by 3 by multiplying by 3. So if I multiply by 3, that'll cancel it out. And what I do to one side, I must do to the other to maintain balance. So what do I have left over on the left side? I have the negative sign, I have the 2 and an x. So let me write that down. Negative 2x. Bring down the equal sign, and 6 times 3 is 18. So now to get rid of that negative 2 that's being multiplied by x, I need to do the opposite of multiplying, which is dividing. So that's why I have a fraction bar right there. And what I do to one side, I do to the other side to maintain the balance. So my answer is x equals negative 9. That's my answer. 18 divided by negative 2 is negative 9. By the way, guys, whenever you get an answer to any of these equations, you could always take your answer and plug it back in to see if it verifies a true statement. So like, for example, on this one, if I got the answer negative 9 and I plug it in right here, negative 2 times negative 9, that's going to be positive 18. A negative times a negative is a positive. And positive 18, take away 5, it really does equal 13. So that's what you call double checking, right? When you take it and you plug it back in and you verify that it actually gives you a true statement. So there is no reason to get any of these equations wrong, because you could always plug in your answer and double check and make sure you did it correctly. Let's go to this next sheet of paper. It's just more practice. Again, all of these equations, before I move on to this, all of these equations, up here we have the steps to solving any equation, okay? So if I did have a crazy, long, ugly-looking equation, I would have to do step 1, simplify both sides. If there's any distributed property, I do it. If there's any combining like terms, I do it. And I do one side at a time. But all of these equations that we're dealing with today, they're already simplified. What do I mean by that? If you look at the left side, is there any distributed property there? No. Is there any combining like terms there? No. How about the right side? No, that's just an integer. That's negative 8. It's simple. There's nothing to do. Later on, next week, we're going to have to do distributed property and combining like terms before trying to isolate the x. Right now, we're just jumping to the second step, which is get x by itself on one side. So on number 1, what do I do to get rid of the plus 2? Minus 2, that's right. So I'm going to put a minus 2 right below it, cancel it out. What I do to one side, I do to the other side. I'm going to bring down the equal sign. What do I get on the right side? What is negative 8 take away 2? Negative 10. You owe $8, you owe $2 more, you're going to owe a total of $10. And what do I do about this x right here? It's all by itself. Just bring it down and slap it right there in front of that equal sign. Guess what? You're done. X equals negative 10. Let's say you're not too sure about that. All you got to do is take the negative 10, plug it into here, do the math, see if it does give you -8. And it does. -10 plus 2, that's -8. So you double check that, right? So let's jump to number 2. Right here we have -2 times x. Again, to get rid of something, you need to identify what's actually happening. It is the multiplication of -2, so you're going to do the opposite of that, dividing by -2. And what you do to one side, you do to the other side to maintain the balance. You cancel that out, it will be x. The equal sign comes down. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, so the answer is x equals 4. Now, if you're not too sure about your answer, you could always double check by taking your answer, plugging it into the original, and doing the math. -2 times 4, that really does equal -8. So you've double checked it. You don't have to double check, but it's good to know that you can double check. Well, let me move that out of the way, sorry. Let's move on to number 3 here. We have x divided by 3. Remember, a fraction bar is really a division. So x divided by 3 equals -6. And again, I want to emphasize, whenever you have a fraction on an equation, you could get rid of it by multiplying by the denominator of that fraction. So right here, instead of, if I want to get rid of this divided by 3, I'm going to multiply by 3. And that'll cancel it out, because 3 on top, 3 on the bottom, that cancels out. But if I multiplied by 3 on one side, I have to multiply by 3 on the other side to maintain the equality. So in this case, x equals -18. So let's move on. Number 4, this one's so easy that you might get confused, right? You have -x equals 2/3, and you want to get x by itself. Notice that you want x by itself, not a -x. So how could you get rid of a negative sign? By either dividing by -1 or multiplying by -1, or simply just changing the sign and changing the sign. I mean, because if you did multiply by -1 on this side and multiply by -1 on this side, it would just simply change the sign. So the answer is x equals -2/3. So it's as easy as this, guys. Let's say another one. -x equals 5. What's your answer going to be? X equals -5, right? Simple as that. All you got to do is change the sign, change the sign. Of course, the explanation is to actually divide by -1 or multiply by -1. Let's keep going here. Actually, this next part is the you try it part. So I'm going to pause for a couple of minutes, and I'm just going to give you the answers. You guys go ahead and try it. If you're at home, go ahead and hit pause and try to do them at home. So here are the solutions. Hopefully you could check them. The number 1 is 5, number 2 is 3, number 3 is 32, number 4 is +5. Now we have these 2-step equations down here. So number 1, we're going to subtract 3. Subtract 3. You're going to have 2x, that comes down, the equal sign also comes down, and 2 comes down. Final step is to divide by 2, and divide by 2, x equals 1. So jumping to number 2 here, you want to get rid of the +4 by doing the opposite of +4, which is a -4. And what you do to one side, you do to the other side. So you're going to have the -3x, you just bring it down. The equal sign, you bring it down. 16 take away 4, that's really just 12. So now we need to get rid of that -3 that's in front of the x. You don't get rid of it by adding 3. You get rid of it by doing the opposite of what's actually going on. There's multiplication right there. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So to get rid of the multiplication of -3, you're going to have to divide by -3. And what you do to one side, you do to the other. So your final answer is x equals -4. I'm sorry. At home, watch this again. Hit pause to slow it down a bit. On this next one, I want to get rid of the -4. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. And then I'm going to cancel it out. Rewrite. Bring down the -2x, the equal sign, and -12 plus 4, if you think about money, is -8. Final step would be to get rid of the multiplication of -2 by dividing by -2. And of course, what you do to one side, you do to the other side. That cancels out. X does equal +4. Final one explained in 10 seconds. Subtract 4 to both sides. Cancels, you get -2x equals 4 take away 4 is 0. Then you divide by -2, and of course 0 divided by anything is still 0.